Hello, I am Karina,
And I'm Maddie.
and welcome to Everything But the Fairy Tale Sink. So this week our episode is on the Northern Scottish legend of Kelpies, and you're going to get to learn a little bit more about them. But first, that was a weird, but first. How are you, Maddie?
I'm good. My roommate and I are trying to cut down on our TV watching time today. So I've been reading since 10:30 in the morning and had to stop to record. And I've read 25 chapters in my
Nice.
book. So I feel pretty accomplished with myself. It's been pretty nice. What about you?
I'm pretty good. My roommate and I watched this really, really cheesy, tattoo reality show last night.
Oh, is it
Uh,
inked?
yeah, it was inked.
Okay, yeah, I like
And
that show.
so it made me laugh and it put me in a good mood last night, and I woke up in a good mood as well. So,
Nice.
woo! All right. And now we have recommendations of the day. Do you want to go first?
Yes. So my recommendation of the day is a book series called the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. I'm currently reading the last one right now called Finale, and it just absolutely draws you in, and it's very hard to put down.
Nice. My recommendation of the day is eyeshadows by the brand Juvia's Place. I have introduced Maddie to them. She knows they're very nice. Yeah, they're just super soft and blendable, and I'm really enjoying working with them.
All right.
On that note,
Shall we get into the episode?
woohoo! Yes, we shall.
Enlighten me.
All right. So I'm going to put a scene in your head first.
Okay.
So imagine the dreary banks of a
Wait.
river.
Wait. Okay.
Oh, you got to close your eyes.
Yes,
All right.
go for it.
I'm going to prop my phone here because I wrote this out super well. All right. Imagine the dreary banks of a river on a cold, dark, wet Scottish night. Your feet are tired. Your heart is heavy. You're so exhausted that anything to spare you of the burden of walking would be a blessing. Suddenly, a beautiful saddled horse appears for you. You mount the beast, and all of a sudden, you are careening towards the water. It's not a horse you've mounted. It's a fairy creature known as the Kelpie. And you, my friend, are about to die a drowning death. Lovely image, right?
Mm-hmm. Can I open my eyes now?
Yes, you can open your eyes now.
Wow,
Yeah.
what an image. You had a tough day and then all of a sudden this horse appears and it's like, I'm going to drown you now.
Yep. I mean, there's other possibilities, which we'll get into, but only if you're a woman. All right.
That
So,
sounds really bad.
yeah. All right. So, let me introduce you to the Scottish water spirit and shapeshifter known as the Kelpie. This creature is rumored to inhabit most, if not all, freshwater bodies in Scotland, or at least northern Scotland, and they tend to be on the hunt for lone travelers. Nessie herself of Loch Ness is generally considered to be a Kelpie, though there is some discourse about whether or not she is. And so the reason that they're searching for travelers is varied from legend to legend. So sometimes, what I was mentioning earlier, they're looking for brides or wet nurses or basically women that they can make do things. But usually they're just searching for food. So powers of the Kelpie include shape-shifting from their human-like form, which is considered their true form, to horses. They've also shown up as dogs or boars or other various animals. And they can create this thunder sound by clapping their tail on the water to scare people. And they can breathe both underwater and on land. They actually live underwater. And they, this is real weird. If you touch a Kelpie, your skin will fuse to theirs, and you can't move your hand. And that's
Okay.
how.
Okay. So picture this. You're having a tough day. Horse pops out of the water. You're like, oh, that's a nice looking horse. You go to pet the horse. Your hand becomes part of the horse, and it runs into the water, dragging you screaming behind it. Is that what happens?
That's literally what happens.
Sounds awful and hilarious at the same time.
Yep. Yeah. On, I guess, a more serious note, not really, because that's also terrifying, but in a less humorous way, they're also considered to be oracles of death and tend to basically it's like the black dog, where if you see one, you might be dying soon.
Well, they drown you, so
Not necessarily. If you see one and it's like the oracle thing, it might just mean that you drown separately of them. Because it is a drowning death they're predicting. Alright, so how do you spot a Kelpie before climbing on its back? This is good knowledge to have. So the most common way to spot a Kelpie is that their tail will be like dripping wet. It will never dry out. It will always be dripping wet. And I've also heard of like sparks flying from nostrils, which I would hope you would notice before you were on a horse, especially if it's night out. But that's besides the point. And the Kelpie is a very vocal creature, and they like to mimic the noises of human yells and screams. And they also like to sing, which is never elaborated on, but they apparently like to sing.
Don't get on a singing horse.
No.
If a horse is singing to you, you turn and you run and you don't look behind you.
This is not My Little Pony.
Yes, it is My Little Pony. It's Scotland's My Little Pony. That's it. That's the episode. Kelpies are just Scotland's version of My Little Pony.
Oh, but we haven't even gotten into what the humans look like yet. The human Kelpies.
My Little Ponies.
No, much better. Alright, so Kelpies are inherently considered malevolent. They, eat humans, but they're also known to like sneak onto farms and steal like grain or other forms of food. So they tend to be blamed for something that could also possibly be like a rat. They're blamed sometimes for when food goes missing. However, they can also be powerful enough to cause catastrophic floods that cause serious damage and serious loss of life. And one of their favorite ways of hunting is with mimicking those sounds. They can mislead people, so they can like mimic the sound of a child crying, for example, so somebody goes to check on the child, or mimic the sound of another person they ate to get the person who's looking for them. So yeah, they tend to be blamed for quite a few disappearances and deaths related to the water. Well, freshwater. We're going to clarify they're only in freshwater, not saltwater. So now we're going into the human form of Kelpies. I'm going to just hold this. So the human form of Kelpie takes two forms in legend. So the first is kind of the stereotypical beautiful women sitting by the shore that you see like in Mermaids, and Rusalka, which we're going to cover later, is like a Russian equivalent. However, it's actually more common. Actually, no, let me go back to the women for a second. Sorry. So the women tend to call to lonely clansmen, of course, and they go walking over and they're like, oh, hey, beautiful woman. And then woman's like, snatch, underwater. You just look so disappointed.
I was gonna make a joke, and then I just was like, no. But also, if I was a lonely Kelpie lady and I saw a handsome Scotsman walking towards me, I too would drown them.
Okay, but we never clarified handsome, we just clarified alone. Alright, but the second form of a Kelpie is actually more common when they're in human form, and that is the form of a man who seduces young women. And that's more so for the wives and the midwives and the wet nurses.
See, anytime I hear male water spirit, I just picture like a decrepit old man.
You're actually correct. They look like evil Danny DeVitos. So let me put this image in your head. You see
No.
Danny DeVito, but with cloven hooves and or gray chest hair, a really raggedy kilt, maybe a vest, but probably he's shirtless, and this cap that just sits on his head.
This is a really horrifying image.
Yeah, so imagine if one of those was trying to seduce you.
You turn and you run.
You would think. But they're described as old, ugly, unkempt, and grouchy. And you can always tell that they're a Kelpie because there's something wrong with them. So cloven hooves or gray chest hair or something of that sort, which actually is later on connected to Christianity and the form of the devil, with the cloven hooves especially. So they either try to seduce the women and take them, or they will stand on a cliffside and wait for somebody to walk towards them. And then they will reverse the traditional Kelpie method and jump onto the victim's back and do this aggressive piggyback ride.
So they pull
over the edge of the cliff.
So they pull an Uno reverse.
Literally, they pull an Uno reverse. So yeah, they basically guide the person over the edge of the cliff with this aggressive piggyback. And that's horrifying to me, just gonna say that. But yeah, so you would think that these men are to be avoided at all costs, these evil Danny DeVitos. However, there's actually a tradition of marrying clanswomen to Kelpie spirits. I don't know why this tradition exists.
I would assume just because like so many cultures have these things where they do various things to appease spirits.
Yeah.
So maybe they do it to appease the Kelpie. They're just like, hey, you know, Melinda, go marry these Kelpies.
They tend to, like, the children of these pairings do actually live on land with the clan, and they carry some sort of trait from their parent, their Kelpie parent, which could be a mane or a tail or cloven hooves, I'm sure, though I actually didn't see that one mentioned.
Can you imagine just birthing a child and it comes out with this glorious mane of hair?
We're gonna talk about these children for like a couple more seconds and then we're gonna move on. All right, so these children, as I said before, carry some of the traits of their parents, both of their parents, the human and the Kelpie, and some have actually gone on to be great like warriors in folklore, such as the dwarven warrior, and he goes by two names, either Dub Sith or Scythech. I probably butchered that, I am so sorry, but basically, the dwarven warrior fought many battles, so great leader and warrior. However, Kelpies aren't always evil. They're fae, so they're very neutral, do whatever they want spirit. So they practice returning of favors, as we see pretty commonly in folklore, especially Celtic folklore. So if you help them, they will help you. They also will sometimes do a task for a human for free. So like, if a wagon falls on you, they might move the wagon. That is generally considered, though, to get you to trust them, so then they can eat you. But it's still nice sometimes if you're smart enough to be like, okay, don't pet the horse.
All Kelpies have a hidden agenda. Continuing, is there any way to like ward off Kelpies? Because I know a lot of cultures have like certain things and they're like, you do this and they stay away from you.
We will get there. The answer is ish. Yeah, basically, they'll sometimes help, sometimes to eat, though, sometimes just because you helped them first, and they'll help you and go on their merry way. There's also a way to capture them. And so the Kelpie appears fully saddled, and they have a bridle, which is the part that goes in the mouth, I believe.
That's a bit. The bridle is the whole set that goes over the face. The bit is what goes in the mouth.
But anyways, so they have the way to capture a Kelpie is to take their magic bridle. And I will say none of the sources gave like a how-to on how to do this, but I'd assume you'd like cut it off or
you run out screaming.
Yeah, but you don't want to touch their skin.
That's true. Wear gloves.
True. That's very possible.
Big brain.
But if you take that magic bridle, you are now in full possession of the Kelpie's power.
So it's like a djinn. When you rub the lamp and you get your wishes, you are in possession of the djinn.
Yeah.
Until you make your wishes.
People actually don't tend to use the Kelpie power to like go after their enemies or something. They just think like, oh, yes, I'm going to take advantage of this creature, which I honestly feel kind of bad for the Kelpies. They basically will put them to work in fields, and it'll be for like hours longer than regular horses, and they won't feed or water them because they don't necessarily need it, or they need significantly less. And there's actually legends of the Kelpies escaping, and depending on how you treated the Kelpie that you had ensnared, they will either like just run and leave you alone, they'll take their bridle, they'll just leave, or they will curse you with great misfortune. So that could be death, that could be drought, that could be your entire family dies and you're left alive. So basically, what I'm getting at is, if you ever get the chance to ensnare a Kelpie, don't bully it. Give it food.
Sounds like a good life lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, usually you don't want to not feed your animals. So, Clan McGregor, specifically, is rumored to be in possession of a magical bridle. And it was mentioned in, like, at least 90% of my sources. However, there is no other information on it other than they might have it, and they have remained extremely tight-lipped about it. Are you ready to know how to get rid of a Kelpie?
Sure.
So, They're honestly pretty easy to get rid of, which is the funniest part to me. So to begin with, they can't attack you unless you either approach or instigate with them first. So basically, if you see a Kelpie and you just decide to leave it alone, you are all good. And you can also take their bridle, or in the human form, you can take their cap. And then hot iron can kill them, as well as regular animals such as dogs and boars. So they can die in the pretty standard fairy way of that hot iron, or you can just send your hunting dogs after them. And are you ready for the biggest plot twist of all time?
Hit me. Let's go.
A Kelpie can die by drowning.
So Kelpies, whoever great mystical being created Kelpies was like, I'm going to make it so they can Uno reverse themselves and drown.
Yeah, and they live underwater, so they can only drown when they're like aggravated or something. I don't know. It really did not elaborate, but it was mentioned, and I was like, that's bizarre.
Just let your imagination run wild as to how that happens.
I would guess it is something along the lines of like when they're being attacked, if they're injured, they could drown. So, now that we're at the end here, what do you think?
I stand with what I said earlier. Kelpies are just Scotland's more aggressive My Little Ponies.
Or, alternatively, evil Danny DeVito.
Yes. One or the other. There's no in between.
Nope. Unless they're a dog, because they can shift into other forms.
I'm gonna picture them as Scotland's My Little Ponies. These Scots people, they drink their whiskey and they're like, yes, a creature that lives underwater and can drown itself, but also turns into a beautiful woman or a decrepit man.
All right, and big question here. Do you think Nessie is the Kelpie?
No.
I don't either.
I don't.
I think she's got to be something else.
Well, she's always pictured with like the huge long neck and the little flippers, and you won't see horses going around like this.
I don't know. I will probably do a deep dive into Nessie later. I don't think she's eaten anybody. All right, so
who knows?
Now we are going into our favorite little section of the outro, which is our positive wish for the viewer. So do you want to go first, Maddie?
Sure. My wish is that when you're going to park in a parking lot and there's a ton of empty spaces and you park in one, nobody parks right beside you.
That's really good. And I also have one related to driving. So this is for our 16 and up viewers. So I hope that when you drive somewhere, if you have to drive somewhere at this time, your car will stay at the perfect temperature the whole drive.
And tune in next week for an episode led by me, which is the Polish legend of the Kikimora. And if you've seen The Witcher, it is not similar to that Kikimora.
I'm excited.
Yes.
All right, so thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope that you enjoyed this legend of Kelpies, and we hope that you will join us next week. And any final words? That sounds way more intimidating than any words to end
on. Well, I thank you all so much for watching this, and if you've made it this far and you've gotten through all our ramblings, thank you. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.